Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The term femicide was first introduced in the mid-1970s, originally denoting crimes where men ended women's lives out of gender-based hatred. Over the years, however, the definition has evolved and varies across countries, depending on cultural context. In most places, it is classified as a severe crime against women, including assault, maiming, or causing death, perpetrated by men amid gender-based animosity. It's often said that women allow themselves to be mistreated, not reporting to police or leaving the men who cause them emotional and physical suffering, and sometimes even continuing to live with someone who might end their life at any moment. This claim is only partially true, as in some countries, the law inherently sides with men, giving them confidence that they will face no repercussions. The story of a young woman named Abril Perez is one of the most vivid examples of how femicide thrives among the affluent sectors of Mexican society. She and her husband, Juan Carlos Garcia Sanchez, were wealthy and respected individuals, holding executive positions in major companies, and from the outside, their marriage seemed flawless. Yet this did not prevent the man from abusing his wife over the years and eventually having someone else violently end her life, also risking the lives of their children. To this day, this case remains unresolved, and all but the main perpetrator have been punished. Abril Perez, family and early years. Abril Sagaon. Perez was born on November 18, 1971, in Monterrey, in the northeastern part of Mexico, and was the second of 3 children to parents Maria del Socorro Sagaon and Manuel Perez. Raised alongside her older brother Javier and younger sister Ana, the family lived modestly, but her parents did everything possible to provide their children with a good education and motivate them to aspire to a better life. All the children excelled in school, engaged in music, sports, and other talents. Abril, in particular, showed a talent for mathematics and entrepreneurial skills from an early age. She was an avid reader and the top student in her class. As a teenager, Abril began working to achieve financial independence, was frugal, and always had savings. From her school days, she was very disciplined, able to plan and manage her time effectively. She dreamed of obtaining a high-quality higher education to secure a well-paying job with career advancement opportunities. After finishing high school, Abril was admitted to the most prestigious university in Nuevo León, where she earned a master's degree in finance and business administration. Her classmates described her as smart, incredibly focused and ambitious, but also cheerful, kind-hearted, and always ready to help others. Upon graduating, Perez was hired in the sales department of one of the country's largest and fastest-growing companies. A few years later, she ventured into digital sales, a new booming field, and realized this was her calling. Quickly rising through the ranks, she became the executive director of the company within 2 years. Abril was young, beautiful, successful, ambitious, and steadily advancing towards the life she had always dreamed of. She built a brilliant career, supported her family, and was full of plans for the future. Yet her personal life remained unsettled, which disappointed her loved ones. Nevertheless, she was confident she would find true love and live a long, happy life. Little did Perez know how her marriage to the perfect man would turn out. Meeting Juan Carlos in the mid-1990s. As Abril's career was on the rise, fate brought her together with a young man named Juan Carlos Garcia Sanchez. He was just 3 years her senior and equally ambitious career-wise, which greatly appealed to her. In return, he was captivated by her beauty, charm, kindness, and disarming smile, combined with a sharp intellect and remarkable determination. Sanchez was a graduate of a prestigious science and technology university, where he excelled in the economics and trade department. He later continued his education in the United States at Harvard University, after which he returned to Mexico and built a successful career in the relatively new field of e-commerce. The young professionals met at a conference dedicated to the latest financial technologies. They crossed paths several more times as their companies collaborated on joint projects, and eventually, Juan Carlos realized he had fallen in love with this intelligent beauty. Through mutual acquaintances, he obtained her phone number and decided to invite Perez out on a date. The feelings were mutual. She also found this educated, erudite man, capable of holding a conversation on almost any topic, appealing and interesting. Their relationship developed quickly, and by 1998 the couple decided to formalize their relationship with a lavish wedding. By then, they had both achieved considerable career success and were involved in developing online stores, a very promising direction. Their life resembled a true fairy tale, evoking envy and admiration among their peers. Dark secrets of the perfect family. It wasn't until 2001, after 3 years of marriage, that the couple welcomed their long-awaited first child, a daughter they named Anna Cecilia. 30-year-old Abril was overjoyed, as the arrival of the child marked a new chapter in their lives. Her husband also seemed happy, treating their newborn daughter with tenderness and awe. 2 years later, Abril gave her beloved a son, whom they named after his father, Juan Carlos Jr. Another 2 years passed, and the family welcomed a third child, a boy named Julio Andreas. It's worth noting that the young mother hardly took any maternity leave and managed to brilliantly combine parental responsibilities with her career advancement. She prepared only homemade meals, helped the children with their schoolwork, took them to sports activities, and strived to be not just an ideal mother, but also their best friend. From the outside, the Perez Sanchez family appeared perfect in every way. Wealthy, successful, raising 3 wonderful children, having everything one could wish for, and seeming very happy. But appearances can be deceiving. What happened inside their home remained unknown even to the couple's closest relatives for a long time. In reality, Juan Carlos showed his true nature in the first years of their life together. He was hot-tempered, aggressive, and rather harsh, intolerant of compromise, insisting that everything had to be exactly as he wanted. But Abril was in love, and initially thought that over time they would rub along and his character would soften. Moreover, their joint projects united them. They worked towards a common goal, and their teamwork yielded impressive results, including financially. However, over time, he became more irritable, and verbal altercations escalated into physical confrontations. After the birth of their first daughter, the husband briefly softened, trying to keep his emotions in check, but it didn't last long. The same happened after the birth of their eldest son, but by the time the third child was born, he no longer even tried to be a good father or husband. Juan Carlos vented his anger, negative emotions, or just bad mood on his wife, sparing no feelings. He insulted and belittled the mother of his children, and her tears seemed to lift his spirits. He then began to regularly physically harm his wife, often doing so in a way that left no visible marks on exposed parts of her body, so she could hide the bruises under clothing or mask them with makeup. All this was done with one simple purpose: to protect his flawless reputation and pride himself on being considered a model family man, loving husband, and father. Abril kept silent for years, trying not to tell even her sister and mother about the ongoing nightmare. She earned well and could have raised the children on her own, providing them with a good education and a stable upbringing. But her husband was a wealthy and very influential man, and he could easily take the children away from her through the courts. Knowing what Juan Carlos was really like, Perez could not bear the thought of her daughter and sons being left alone with a real monster, capable of anything, starting over with old problems. 2010 approached. The situation within the family escalated to its limit, to the extent that those who once considered this household ideal began to suspect something terrible was happening within. Abril was not just subdued, but deeply distressed, visibly thinner, sleeping poorly, and frequently had bruises on her face and body that became increasingly difficult to conceal and impossible for her to explain. Juan Carlos maintained a calm and confident demeanor, pretending that nothing was wrong. In public, he continued to play the role of a loving and caring husband, interacting with his wife politely and affectionately, but at home, he transformed into a monster, making it increasingly dangerous to be near him. Despite pleas from loved ones to divorce, Abril stubbornly insisted that everything was fine and that she would handle the problems with her husband herself. 2014 marked the peak of Sanchez's career when he became the head of a major trading company and one of the most influential people in the field. After this promotion, the family moved to Mexico City and settled in a large house in one of the capital's best neighborhoods. Their children attended an elite private school, and beleaguered Perez sincerely hoped that the move and complete change of scenery would positively affect their relationship. Contrary to expectations, nothing changed. The man continued to physically harm and insult his wife, increasingly doing so in front of their children. Furthermore, Juan Carlos began to groundlessly accuse his wife of infidelity, and whenever she tried to defend herself, he resorted to using his fists, claiming he would find evidence of her disloyalty. He monitored her phone and emails, forbade her from using social media, and later, finding no evidence, even hired a private detective to follow Abril and photograph any men who came near her. 2 attempts on her life. For another 4 years, the woman tried everything to save her marriage, though her husband's behavior became utterly unbearable. She lived in a never-ending nightmare that outwardly seemed like a happy and successful union. Many even envied Abril, as she had such a prominent, influential, wealthy, and as many thought, caring husband. In 2018, the Sanchez family traveled to Monterrey to celebrate Catholic Christmas with the Perez family. However, Juan Carlos behaved toward his wife as he was accustomed, not shying away from her parents, who were horrified by what they witnessed. At that moment, the woman realized things could not continue this way and informed her husband that she would file for divorce once they returned to Mexico City. Hearing this, in a fit of rage, he grabbed her throat and squeezed so tightly she nearly lost consciousness. Only her mother, Maria del Socorro, entering the room and raising the alarm, prevented a tragedy. When the family returned to their home in the capital, Abril, preparing for divorce, moved from the marital bedroom to a small guest room, but this did not save her from the tyrant. On the morning of January 4th, while she was still asleep, her husband entered the bedroom holding a baseball bat. He struck her hard on the head and was about to swing again. Half awake, Perez barely understood what was happening, but managed to slip off the bed just in time, literally saving her own life. The woman began to scream, and the children ran into the room, having heard the noise. The youngest son shielded his mother with his body, while the eldest son took the bat from his father. Together with their mother, they fled the house and headed to the hospital as Abril needed medical attention. Doctors diagnosed her with a serious concussion and a deep laceration above her eyebrow, which required stitches. Marital conflict. As soon as his wife and sons left the home, Juan Carlos contacted his lawyer to explain the situation and asked for help in resolving it. He also posted on his social media page, claiming that his wife had betrayed him, was unfaithful, and intended to leave him for another man, taking their children and attempting to take all their jointly acquired assets. Moreover, he claimed that his wife had stolen all the money from their home safe and that when he tried to stop her, she injured him with a knife in the shoulder. As proof, he posted photos of a bloodied knife and brown stains on the floor. However, the blood on the floor was actually Abril's from her own room, and the knife photo was taken from the internet. Nonetheless, Sanchez's friends believed his story and began actively sharing and reposting his account on their personal social media pages, calling for widespread attention to this egregious case. While still in the hospital, Perez filed a police report against her husband, accusing him of attempting to end her life. After being discharged, she moved out of their home, taking her sons with her, over whom she was granted temporary sole custody. Their eldest daughter, by then an adult who had finished school and moved to another city for college, also sided with her mother, condemning her father's cruel and unacceptable behavior. Sanchez was ordered to pay alimony to his ex-wife and sons while they stayed with their mother, although the amount was quite small, about $300, which he disagreed with. He himself faced a potential prison sentence, but the influential businessman was confident he would remain free and avoid any punishment. After enduring such a nightmare, Abril decided to return to her native Monterrey, to her parents' home, taking her children with her. It was there that she filed for divorce, and from there she monitored the situation. Meanwhile, she began offering help and online consultations to women in similar situations, and she planned to open a center for psychological and legal assistance for victims of domestic violence. Corrupt justice system. Only in September 2019, 8.5 months after the incident, was Sanchez finally arrested on charges of femicide, inflicting bodily harm and attempting to end his wife's life. He was placed in jail, where he spent over a month, but by November of that year, he managed to appeal the pretrial detention decision and was released. The case was presided over by Judge Federico Mas, who unexpectedly reclassified it, leading to a new trial. During the trial, photographs of Perez from the hospital and entries from her medical records were not presented, and the testimonies of the woman and her sons were deemed insufficient grounds for detaining Juan Carlos. Furthermore, the defendant insisted that his ex-wife was turning the children against him. The defendant was released directly from the courtroom, as Judge Mas considered that his actions did not pose a direct threat to the victim's life. According to the judge, if Sanchez had truly intended to end his wife's life, he would have followed through, especially since she was asleep during the attack and unable to resist. Abril was shocked and frightened by this turn of events. She realized that her ex-husband had utilized all his connections and paid off the right people to be set free, putting her and her children in danger. She sent an official letter to the judge expressing fear for her life, but it had no impact on the situation. Immediately after being released, Juan Carlos began legal proceedings against his ex-wife for custody of their sons. He forced her and the children to return to Mexico City to attend court sessions. Otherwise, the matter could be resolved in absentia, not in her favor, so she was compelled to return to the capital. Tragedy. Witnessed by children. On November 25th, Abril arrived in Mexico City with her children. She genuinely feared the man she had lived with for over 20 years and did not want to encounter him unnecessarily. She planned to leave the city the same day after the hearing and had already purchased plane tickets, which Juan Carlos knew about. Ironically, on that day, a mass demonstration against gender-based violence was taking place in the capital. Immediately after the court session, the woman, along with her sons and their lawyer, got into a car heading to the airport, but they never reached their destination. At a traffic light, a motorcyclist pulled up next to their car, unexpectedly drew a handgun, and fired twice at Perez, who was sitting in the front passenger seat, before swiftly fleeing the scene. One of the bullets passed through and grazed the younger son, who was sitting in the back seat, but fortunately, none of the children were seriously hurt. The injured woman was quickly taken to the nearest hospital, where doctors fought desperately for over 6 hours to save her life. Unfortunately, due to severe injuries and significant blood loss, they were unable to save 48-year-old Abril, who passed away that evening. The victim's parents, brother, and sister flew to the capital immediately and urged authorities to arrest Juan Carlos, convinced that he was behind this brutal act that occurred in front of the children. However, law enforcement had a different view, stating that without identifying the shooter, it was difficult to discuss his motives, and it could not be definitively claimed that it was a hitman sent by Sanchez. The case was not classified as femicide until further investigation. Predictably, Juan Carlos remained free, and the police began searching for the shooter, which could take an extended period. The orphaned children were temporarily placed under the care of their maternal relatives, while their father prepared to fight for them in court again. Abril's sister wrote an angry post on her social media account, openly blaming Sanchez for the incident, but her page was soon blocked and later deleted. Nonetheless, the family decided to fight and draw heightened public attention to the case, highlighting that the attack on Perez happened on the day dedicated to fighting gender-based violence, public outcry, and the flight of the main suspect. The victims' relatives managed to draw attention to the tragedy that struck their family. Moreover, people openly discussed numerous cases where men attempted to end women's lives, but did not follow through and remained free without facing any punishment. Due to the significant public outcry, the General Prosecutor's Office of Mexico initiated a new investigation concerning Sanchez, and was also instructed to check the legality of the actions of the judges who had released him. The judges handling Juan Carlos's case were temporarily suspended from work and later removed from their positions. Mexican politician and women's rights defender Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo officially confirmed that the Perez case had been reclassified as femicide and would be reinvestigated, and the judges who had released Juan Carlos could face consequences for the woman's death if his guilt was proven. The businessman regularly posted on social media, calling for the perpetrator of his former wife to be found and punished to the fullest extent of the law. He also noted that despite the disagreements between him and Abril, he would never dare harm the mother of his children, let alone end her life in front of their sons. However, his daughter Ana Cecilia left an angry comment under one of these posts, accusing her father of cruelty and accompanying her words with photos of her mother taken in the hospital after Juan Carlos had attacked her with a bat. Despite the resonance and widespread media coverage of the case, it was decided to leave Sanchez free during the investigation. He was placed under a restraining order and required to check in weekly at a police station, but after he failed to appear at the appointed time, a warrant for his arrest was issued for violating the order. As one might guess, no one could find the accused. It turned out that the businessman again used his money and connections to quickly leave the country and enter the United States. Mexican authorities contacted Interpol, reporting the fugitive accused of a serious crime, and the next day, Sanchez was declared wanted almost worldwide. Arrest of hired criminals and reconstruction of the crime scene. During this time, efforts were underway to locate the hired criminal who, it turned out, did not work alone. Surveillance footage from street cameras clearly showed two vehicles following the car from the courthouse, in which Abril, her children, and their lawyer were traveling. The motorcyclist, who later emerged and performed the lethal act, appeared to be in constant communication with the individuals in the aforementioned cars, receiving directions and instructions. It took investigators several months to identify just some of the participants of the incident, and it wasn't until March 5, 2020, that two suspects were arrested in connection to the case. Surprisingly, they did not resist arrest and almost immediately started giving testimonies, hoping to mitigate their sentences. It was confirmed that the orchestrator of the crime was indeed Juan Carlos, who had paid a substantial amount, with 7 people directly involved in carrying out the act. The first to be apprehended were the driver of one of the chase cars and the motorcyclist who fired the fatal shots. It emerged that, while in prison, Juan Carlos had hired a couple of seasoned criminals to protect him, acting as his personal bodyguards. One of these criminals was released a week before Sanchez, and the other was freed several days after him. Once out of prison, the businessman reconnected with them, asking them to find reliable people to carry out the elimination of a person, promising a substantial sum of money to each if successful. When all participants were identified, the orchestrator transferred the promised money and provided precise instructions about the route and vehicle Abril would be using. The most challenging part of the plan turned out to be luring his former wife to Mexico City. The man resorted to blackmail, threatening to take the children if she did not appear in court. Although she complied with the court appearance, she had no intention of staying in the capital, planning to return to Monterrey the same day. And Juan Carlos knew this from his sources. Despite this information, it wasn't until the end of October 2020 that 3 more participants in the criminal conspiracy were apprehended. Moreover, the arrest of these criminals was initially on suspicion of distributing controlled substances, and it was only at the police station that it was discovered these individuals could be involved in the high-profile crime. All arrested were part of a major drug trafficker, Juan Carlos Maldonado's gang, known as Juan Balto. He had served time with Sanchez and provided him protection, later agreeing to assist in eliminating his former wife for a hefty reward. Maldonado was arrested a couple of weeks later in November 2020. He began giving testimonies, confirming that the businessman had sought reliable individuals to end his ex-wife's life, and he agreed to help him in return for a substantial reward. There was no doubt left that Sanchez was both the client and organizer of the crime, and his previous assault on Abril with a bat was officially reclassified as an attempt on her life, leading the court to finally issue an arrest warrant for him on charges of femicide. However, the man's whereabouts remained unknown. By spring 2021, the remaining participants in the commissioned perpetration of Perez were found and arrested. Notably, one of them was already serving a sentence for another crime at the time. Also, during extensive searches, the weapon used to make the fatal shots was found. In total, 9 people associated with the same criminal group were detained, 7 of whom were directly involved in chasing and shooting Abril. Almost 5 years after the woman's death, the main culprit and client of the crime, Juan Carlos Garcia Sanchez, remains at large, with his whereabouts still undetermined. The individual who pulled the trigger, ending the life of a mother of 3, was sentenced to 52 years in prison. 2 other criminals who chased the car and coordinated the shooter's actions were also sentenced to 50 years each. The other arrested participants of the incident are still under investigation, and their fate has yet to be decided. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to my channel. There are many shocking stories ahead of you.